All right, so I promise you that we're going to look at one prophecy tonight. And in keeping with the season, Christmas and all that, we've picked the virgin birth. Now, in many ways, it's probably one of the most ridiculous things you can think of, to say that Jesus didn't have an earthly dad, that his mum just, whatever, that it just happened. You know, I don't want to go into any of the biology or science of it or any of that sort of stuff, but mainly, But strangely enough, or perhaps not so strangely, since we're talking about God here, Jesus' entire claims rest on the virgin birth. The virgin birth makes possible Jesus being fully man and fully God. If it didn't happen, then he can't be both. If he's just a normal human, he can't be God as well. And as Craig was saying, it's necessary for him to be God because of that blood sacrifice that we need. Now, this isn't something which was just made up by the disciples or stolen from pagan religions, as you'll hear some scholars try and claim. This was something which was predicted over 600 years in advance. We find it in the book of Isaiah. It should be coming up on the screen. Yeah, Isaiah 7:14. Okay. Now, how many of you here have either Good News Bible or Revised Standard Bible? Can I just see a show of hands? All right, if you have it with you, if you have it open and you're looking at it, you're probably a little confused right now because that's not what your Bible says. Your Bible doesn't say, behold, the virgin shall conceive. It says, behold, the young woman shall conceive. And it's on that one word, that Hebrew word, which so many books and books of arguments rest. Now, I don't want to go into a Hebrew word study tonight. I'm not qualified, and even if I was, you would fall asleep very, very quickly. I tried to do some reading, and it was very boring. But it was, believe me. But luckily, we don't need to do that. We don't need to go to that depth to try and figure this out. I mean, let's take an example from English. If you're trying to figure out what a word means, you look at its context. Take the word trunk, for example. I could be talking about the boot of a car, an elephant's nose, the stem of a tree, a box, or swimming trunks. Now, if I say, grab your trunks, let's go for a swim, you don't need to think about it. You know I'm not talking to you about elephants. You know exactly what I mean. Well, you do. I don't know what sort of... That's just no. That's just weird. All right, so let's take a look at this verse in context. And there we go. All right, I'm just going to paraphrase this there, but it's there so I'm not misquoting or anything. Basically, the prophet Isaiah has been sent to the current king, King Ahaz, and he's got a challenge for him, a challenge from God. Basically, he asks him, Ahaz, what would it take for you to believe that God is God? Pick anything, from the depths of the sea to the height of heaven. Now, Ahaz kind of chickens out here. He goes, well, let's get the exact word. I will not ask, nor will I test the Lord. Now, God calls him on this, and he goes, fine, I'm going to give you a sign then. A young woman will get pregnant and give birth to a son. What sort of sign is that? How many men are in this room right now? Hand up. Okay, that sign has been fulfilled many, many times over, just with us here. When you look at the context of this, they're talking about an attesting miracle, something which will show that God is God and that his word and the things that he says are true. They're talking about something completely extraordinary. They're not talking about a young woman getting pregnant. They're talking about a virgin conceiving a child. So the virgin birth, I think quite clearly, is a prophecy of the Messiah. It's something which is predicted well in advance. But we also can see that it's a historical fact. It's not just something which we see just in the Bible. We do see it in the Bible. Dan already talked about the Gospels, but it's only specifically mentioned by Matthew and Luke. But the virgin birth is alluded to by Mark in his Gospel, by John in his, and even by Paul in his epistles. You can find all the references for these in your notes or in the extended notes if you want to go into detail. But we also find support for the virgin birth if you ignore the Bible. We find in the Jewish writings of the day, they don't acknowledge that Jesus was born of a virgin, but archaeology has found a genealogical table from dating around 70 AD, which says that Jesus was the bastard son of a wedded wife, that he was conceived out of wedlock, and they don't know who his father is. Like I said, that doesn't show that he was born of a virgin, but it does show that in that day and age, it was well known that there was confusion around the circumstances of Jesus' birth. And you find that in John 8, the Pharisees actually accused Jesus of being born of fornication, saying that, we know who our fathers are, who's yours? It was something which was well known. We find it mentioned by the church fathers. We even find it specifically substantiated in the Quran. The Quran teaches that Jesus was born of a virgin. I'm not saying that we necessarily take all our doctrine from the Quran, but in this case, don't misquote me, but in this case, we find support for it there. So what's the point of all this? What's the point of all these prophecies? Simply this: the virgin birth is just one of over 300. And every single one of those has just as much support as the virgin birth, in many cases more. Jesus' ministry was more every detail of Jesus' ministry was foreordained, set out in advance, and it's there in black and white. You can go and check it out for yourself. Jesus wasn't just some rabbi walking on the shores of Galilee 2,000 years ago. He fits the fingerprint evidence. He fits it all. He is the Messiah of Israel, the Son of God. And I want to invite Cam back up to explain why that's relevant to you and me.